Hey guys, this is Hemant from Edureka. Welcome to this session on cloud computing tutorial for beginners. Guys, this is a live session and it is meant for people who are new to the cloud computing industry, right? So I'm going to start with the basics today. I'm going to discuss cloud computing from scratch and I hope you enjoy this session today. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the agenda to see what all we'll be covering in today's session. So guys, this is our agenda. We'll start with why do we actually need cloud computing and then move on to see what is cloud computing exactly. After that, we're going to see what are the different cloud models which are there in cloud computing, and moving on, we'll look at cloud providers. So cloud providers are the companies which provide you with the cloud services. All right. Once we're done with that, we'll move on to the hands-on part where you will launch your first server in the cloud. We will try to deploy it in AWS and in Azure as well. All right. So guys, this is our agenda for today. I hope it's clear to you. Some things that I like to mention, guys. Any doubt you have during the session, please comment it in your comment box. My team is here to help you out in that. All right. So with that, let's start today's session with the first topic, which is why cloud computing. Alright, so let's understand this using an example. Say you want to host a website, right? And say there is no cloud computing right now, right? And you want to host a website. How would you do that? So first you would have to buy a stack of servers, right? You need servers to host your website on. After that, you have to keep the peak traffic in mind. Now, what is peak traffic? Peak traffic is basically the traffic which comes for a shorter duration. For example, you can expect the most traffic between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. because that is the time when people are the most free, right? So there's a peak traffic, and after 10 p.m. the traffic can decline. So when your traffic booms, you have to have the servers to manage them, right? And after 10 p.m. if the traffic declines, these servers that you have deployed to handle your traffic become idle, right? So you have to get maximum servers so that you don't get any problems when the traffic goes up in a peak, right? After that, since you have these many servers, you have so many servers, you have to continuously monitor and maintain them because you don't want your website to experience a downtime, right? So you have to continuously monitor them and maintain them so that your website is up and running. All right. So this setup that is without cloud computing had some disadvantages. Let's see what were the disadvantages. Right. So first of all, the setup was very expensive because you are buying servers on your own, right? And servers, guys, are not cheap. They're very expensive. Right, so the setup was very expensive. Also, since you are troubleshooting problems on your own, that is, you're maintaining your servers, you're monitoring them at the same time, right? So these problems could be tedious and they can conflict with your business goals. What I mean by that is, if you have someone to handle your servers, then you can actually focus on how you can expand your application. But if half of the time you're worried whether your website is experiencing any downtime or are you protected with all the latest security patches and everything, and then you cannot focus on your security goals. All right. The third thing was, since the traffic is varying, your servers will be idle most of the time, right? So like I said, you have to have the maximum servers so that your any kind of traffic can be accommodated within your servers, right? So like I gave you a window that between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. you will experience the most traffic, but what will happen 10 p.m.? Happen after 10 p.m. After 10 p.m. your traffic will drop and most of your servers will become idle. So that was a problem. All right. So these problems were to be faced, or these were to be solved, and we solved it using cloud computing. Now came cloud computing, and now we were able to solve these problems like this. So first of all, our problem was that our setup was very expensive, right? So with cloud computing, it was solved. How? Because now we don't buy servers anymore, right? We just rent them from the cloud providers, and we can rent them not on a monthly basis, not on a yearly basis, but on an hourly basis. Right, on hourly basis, and now you can rent them actually on minutes basis as well. So as long as you want the servers, you pay for them, and when you're done with your servers, you can terminate them, and that's it. You don't have to pay anymore. So this is a very cool thing about cloud computing. Also the scalability factor. So you had to scale your resources according to your traffic, right? So you don't have to maintain the maximum number of servers now. What you can do is you can vary your number of servers according to traffic. So if the traffic is more, you can auto scale your servers to a number which is okay with the number of people who are trying to access your website. And as the number of people who are trying to access your website goes down, as the traffic goes down, you can scale down from the number of servers you were having. Alright, so scalability is again a feature in cloud computing. Also, when you rent servers on cloud, you don't have to manage them or maintain them anymore. So that is the responsibility of the cloud provider who's providing you with those cloud servers. So so now you can focus on your business goals, you can focus on how to expand your application and other things. Right? So it becomes very tension free when you're using cloud computing, and at the same time it's cheap as well. So it's a win-win situation. So we've understood why do we need cloud computing. Let's go on and understand what is cloud computing exactly. Alright, so cloud computing is the use of remote servers on the internet to store, to manage, and to process data. Rather than doing it on a local server, you do it on remote servers. So this is what cloud computing is. You can store your data, you can manage your data using databases, or you can process your data using by renting a server which has larger processing power. So you can get it faster. You can get your work done faster rather than had to do it on a local computer, which would have been slow. On the other hand, if you wanted to do a large batch processing work, you could have bought a server which had a lot of processing power, but that wouldn't have made sense, because after your work is done, you don't need that computer anymore, right? So all of that problems could be solved with cloud computing. Alright, now cloud computing also is further divided into models, right? So there are two types of models in cloud. So the two types of models are service models and deployment models. So service models basically mean the kind of service that cloud offers. These service can be divided into further modules, and then you have the deployment models. How can you deploy your application? So when I say deploy your application, how you can upload your application, in what ways you can upload your application on the cloud. Right, so these are the two different models that you have in cloud computing. So let's discuss them one by one. So first, let's discuss the service models. What are service models? Alright, so you basically have three kind of service models in cloud computing. You have infrastructure as a service, you have platform as a service, and then you have software as a service. Right, so let's discuss each of these. So first, you have the infrastructure as a service. So when I say infrastructure as a service, imagine it like this. You get a server on cloud, right? So you choose an operating system and you get that server on the cloud. For example, you want a Linux system on the cloud, right? So you request your cloud provider for the Linux system, and they give you a fresh system to work on. So they'll give you the IP address, they'll give you the password, you can remote desktop into that server, and now that server is fresh. You can install anything on that server, and you can make that server anything. For example, you can make that server to be a web server, you can make that server to be a database server. It's all yours. You can do anything with it. So that is infrastructure as a service, because you have the access to the operating system of your server, right? So it provides virtualized computing resources over the internet. No worries about the underlying physical machine, because you don't have to manage the physical machine. That all of that is managed by the cloud provider, and it abstracts the user from the physical machine. All right, so these are the points about infrastructure as a service. Then comes platform as a service. So in comparison to infrastructure as a service, where you were getting the access to the operating system and you can do anything with the system, when you are using platform as a service, you don't get the access to the operating system. All you get to an access to is a user interface. For example, you want to host a website, right? So you take a service from AWS or Azure and you say, I want a platform, I don't want the whole infrastructure. So what they do is they launch a server, and they don't give you the IP address and password to it. So you don't get the access to the operating system. What they do give you is a button, right? So you can click on that button, which is upload, and upload your website onto it, right? And that is it. You don't have to install any software. You don't have to manage the files over there. You don't have to do anything. You just have to upload your files, and those files will be automatically deployed on whatever link that they will give you, right? And you go to that link and your website will be deployed as it is. You don't have to manage the operating system at all. This is what platform as a service is. And then comes software as a service. So software as a service basically means you don't get the server, you don't get a user interface, you basically just get a software, right? For example, Salesforce Cloud, that is the most common example that you guys might know. And for those of you who don't know Salesforce, imagine it like this. So if you launch a server on the cloud, you are getting Windows operating system as well, right? Now, as you guys know, Windows operating system is licensed, right? But if you are renting a server on the cloud, you are basically using Windows as a software as a service as well, right? Because you have rented the Windows software as well, right? So that is the most easy way you can understand it in, that you take software as a service rather than taking the whole server as a the whole infrastructure as a service, or taking as a platform as a service, right? So this is what software as a service is. Moving on, guys. Now, if you would like to conclude what you just learned, you can say if you have your own computer, you'll have to manage the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization, operating system, and everything, right? If you take infrastructure as a service from a cloud provider, you have to manage only the operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and applications, right? So this is what infrastructure as a service is. If you take platform as a service, wherein you just can upload your application, you get the applications and data which you can manage. The rest, everything is managed by the cloud provider. And if you take software as a service, you don't get to manage anything. You just can use the software as you want, and when you're done with it, just delete it from your subscription, right? So you don't have to manage the underlying computer, you don't have to manage the underlying operating system, not anything. Just the software that you get, pay for the software that you use, and you're done with it, right? So these were the service models. Then comes the deployment models. So what are deployment models? So deployment models are basically of three kinds. You have the public cloud, you have the hybrid cloud, and then you have the private cloud, right? So what is the difference between these three? Public cloud is basically when you're sharing your server with a host of different people, right? For example, you launch your server on AWS, right? So if you're launching a server on AWS, you are basically getting a server on the AWS infrastructure. Now you don't know whether the server on which your operating system is hosted is also giving operating system to someone else or not, because on one server you might have hundreds of operating systems which are virtualized. All right. So if you are say using a Linux system on AWS, and you haven't specified that you need a standalone server, or you haven't specified that you need a private server, your server can be shared with a lot of customers. All right. So if you would like to opt for a standalone system, that standalone system could be a private cloud, because they give you the server privately, that this is your server and we have deployed only your operating system onto it, and you can use it. You can be rest assured, you can be safe with your data over there. All right. So it's not like if you are using a public cloud server, your data is not safe. But some companies have this policy that the data is confidential and it cannot be hosted on public cloud. So in that case, you use a private cloud. The other side of private cloud is that you host your own servers, right? You buy servers and you set up your own cloud, right? And you deploy applications on it. That also is termed as a private cloud. Now, hybrid cloud is actually a mixture of both public cloud and private cloud. So if you have an application wherein you're using public cloud and private cloud both, you term it as hybrid cloud. For example, if you are in a data science company, right, and you want to host a website. So hosting a website can be done on the public cloud, but you have, at the same time, you have some confidential data as well that you don't want to expose to the internet, right? So you can do that on public cloud as well, but because of companies' policies, you can host it on your own servers, right? So this kind of architecture then comes out to be a hybrid cloud architecture, wherein you're making use of public cloud and private cloud both, right? So these were the deployment models, guys. Moving along, now you've learned the basic concepts about cloud. You know why do you need cloud, you know what is cloud exactly, you know the different models of the cloud, and you understand that okay, so this is what the cloud world is all about. But how do you get started? How to get your own server in the cloud? So for using cloud computing, you first have to contact a cloud provider. And if you want to choose which cloud provider to choose, there are actually hundreds of cloud providers out there, right? So which one to choose? So let me list out a few of the cloud providers. You have Rackspace, you have DigitalOcean, you have IBM Cloud, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Joint, Termac, VMware, and of course AWS, right? So AWS and Microsoft Azure, if we talk about, they are the top two cloud providers in the industry, right? And today in this session, I'll be telling you guys about AWS and Microsoft Azure both, right? So let's go ahead and launch our first server in AWS and Microsoft Azure, right? So let's move on to the demo section. Let me quickly switch to my browser where you can launch servers. So hold on a sec. All right, guys, so this is how this is my browser. So first I'll be going on to the AWS console. So let me go to the AWS console. All right, so the first thing that you need to actually be on AWS is creating an account. So I'm assuming you guys have an account on AWS, or if you don't, once you have that, just go to your console and this is how it will look like, right? So these are all the services that AWS has to offer us. So our aim is to launch our first server in the cloud, right? So the infrastructure as a service part that I was telling you, that service in AWS is called EC2, right? So you'll be clicking on EC2 and you will see this console, right? So we are interested in launching an instance, right? So I'll click on launch instance, and then I get to choose the operating system that I want, right? So for now, let's launch an Ubuntu server. So I'll select the Ubuntu server. I'll choose the processing that I want, processing path that I want. Now remember guys, for those of you who are practicing in AWS, once you create an AWS account, there is something called a free tier, right? So a free tier, under the free tier, you can launch AWS services free for 1 year up to a certain limit. Right, so remember, the only free tier eligible processor in this in these selections is T2.micro. So ensure that you're selecting T2.micro every time you're launching a server, right, for practice. Next, you'll click on next, and you don't have to worry about all these settings. Since this is a basic session, we are just interested in launching a browser, in a server. You can straight away go ahead and click on review and launch. Everything is by default set. So you can review all the settings which you have done and now click on launch. Once you click on launch, you will be prompted with this screen where you have to create a key pair. What is a key pair? A key pair is basically a way to authenticate yourself to the servers of AWS, right? So you basically have a public key and a private key. So whenever you're trying to connect to your server, you have to match your private key with the public key which is there on AWS. So they give you the private key, and every time you try to connect, you have to feed in the private key to connect to the server. All right, so let's create a new key pair right now. Let's click on create a new key pair, and let's give it the name as 𝐓𝐞𝐜𝐧𝐿_2. all right, and now let's click on download key pair. All right, so my key pair has been downloaded. Let's copy this key pair to our desktop. Right, let me paste it here. All right, so my key pair has been pasted here, and now let's click on launch instances. Alright, so my servers are now being launched. I can check the status of my servers by going on to the AWS Management Console and clicking on EC2. So I can go to this particular link, and as you can see, there'll be a server which will be deployed. So it says it's in the pending state. That basically means it is being deployed right now. Okay, so while this is being deployed, let me quickly show you how you can deploy a server in the Azure cloud service as well. Right, so for going to the Azure service, let me type in the URL, that is portal.azure.com, and again you have to have an account to actually work in Azure. So once you create an account, you will be prompted with this screen, which is basically the console wherein you can work with Microsoft Azure. So what we want to do is we want to launch a server in Azure. So let's do the same thing. Let's launch an Ubuntu server in Azure. So like in AWS, the infrastructure as a service was known as EC2 service in AWS, right? So if we talk about that same exact service in Azure, that service is known as virtual machine. So we'll go to virtual machines. We'll click on virtual machines and we'll be prompted with this screen. So we have to add a new server. We'll click on add. And then we'll get this screen wherein we have to choose our choice of operating system. So let's launch an Ubuntu server, and then what type of Ubuntu server do I want? Let's choose the 16.04 one, and let's click on create. Right, with that you will get this screen wherein you have to fill all the information. So let's name our server as Edureka demo-1. Then the username, so username is basically the login name that you want your server to have. So let's give it the name as Edureka. The authentication type, so it supports both. You can either have an authentication type of the public key that I got in AWS, or I can just choose to have a password, right? So that is pretty simple. Let's choose a password here, and let's confirm the password. Alright, and then you are prompted to choose create a resource group. So basically a resource group is something where is a group of resources, right? So it basically is there to make your life easier. You can manage all your resources under one group, right? So we are creating a new instance. Let's create a new resource group for it. Let's call it Edureka demo, and we'll click on OK. Right, so next screen they will ask me the configuration that I want for my server. So let's choose the least configuration and click on select. Alright, so leave all these settings at blank. You don't need to touch them. Just click on OK, and then you will get this page wherein you'll have to review everything and click on purchase. So this page usually takes time to come on. Okay, it came. So we just have to agree to the permissions and click on purchase, and you're set. Your server will start getting deployed on Azure, right? So while this is being deployed, let's check if our EC2 server is ready. So yes, it is in the green state, which means it's now ready. Let's try to connect to this server. We'll click on that server, and once you click on that server, you will get the public IP of that server over here, right? So this is the IP you want to connect to. At the same time, I got a PEM file, remember? So this PEM file, to connect to my Ubuntu server, I usually connect it through my Putty software. So there's a software called Putty, using which you can connect to your remote servers on AWS or on any cloud provider. Now this Putty software can only accept PPK format of key pairs or of private keys, right? So first we have to convert a PEM file into PPK, and the way to do that is using Putty generator, right? So we'll launch the Putty gen software, and we'll click on load, and then we will go to the place where you have stored your PEM file, which is here, right? So let's convert this file to PPK. So for that you will click on save private key, and you will name it as say 𝐓𝐞𝐜𝐧𝐿_2 and hit save. Alright, so you have the PPK ready with you now. Now all you have to do is open the Putty software. Now over here you have to punch in the IP address. So this is the IP address of your server. Let's punch in the IP address over here. And to attach your PPK file, you have to go into SSH and click on authentication, and then click on browse, and then you'll be prompted with the screen. Just go to your PPK file and you should be fine. This is my PPK file. I'll click on open, again click on open, and then I'll get this terminal. Just click on yes, and it'll ask you the login name. So by default, any server that you create on AWS, if it's an Ubuntu server, the login name for that server would be Ubuntu. So let us enter that and hit enter. Alright, so if everything goes well, if it authenticates your key file, you'll be able to get into your server. Right, so you have successfully connected to your Ubuntu server. Now you can install any kind of softwares on it. You can install the LAMP stack or the Apache web server to host a website, and once you install the softwares, you just simply have to go to this IP address and it will start serving website for you. right? So this is the way you connect to your AWS instance, and this is congratulations on your first server on AWS. All right, so let me close this session. Let's go to our Azure now. So our Azure instance is also ready. Let's try to connect to it. All right, so this is the IP address of that instance. Let's copy the IP address and paste it in our Putty. Alright, so now in this case, guys, you don't have any PEM file or PPK file because we opted for the password option. Alright, so let's click on open straight away, and this should give us the screen wherein we have to give the login name. So we created a username at the time of configuration, right? So that username was Edureka. We'll enter that, and then it'll ask us the password. So let's fit in the password that we chose at the time of configuring and hit enter, and if everything goes well, you can connect to your server. So you're now connected to your Ubuntu server on the Azure platform. So congratulations on that as well. Now these servers were infrastructure as a service, guys, right? Now remember I told you guys something about platform as a service. So let me show you how they are different. Right, so on AWS, if you talk about platform as a service, the service in AWS is known as Elastic Beanstalk. All right, so it's just an advanced version of EC2. So basically, it's EC2, but you don't have the access to the operating system. All right, so let me show you how you can launch an application in Elastic Beanstalk. So basically, you will click on Create New Application. All right, and you will give the application some name. So let's give the name as Edureka-2 and click on next. So then they'll ask you what type of server do you want. Do you want a worker environment or do you want a web server? So let's click on create web server. What kind of platform do you want? So as you can see, I'm just clicking everything. I'm not installing, I'm not typing any commands. So say I want a PHP server, I'll just select PHP and I'll hit next. Now it is asking me for what kind of application do I want to deploy in it. Let it be the sample application, and don't change any of the settings, just click next, and this is the URL that you will get where your website will be deployed. Alright, everything is happening automatically. Let's click next and hit next again and hit next again. Don't put anything here because we have not discussed what these are. Hit next, and then the final page will come where you have to review everything. So after reviewing, after you are sure all your settings are right, you can hit launch, and this will launch your Elastic Beanstalk application with PHP installed on it. Right, so it takes some time to actually launch. It will take around 2-3 minutes to launch. So for the very reason, I have already launched an application so that I can show you how the Elastic Beanstalk console actually looks like. Alright, so this is my application. Alright, so I've already deployed, I've done the same settings that I did in Edureka-2. It's a PHP server. Alright, and once that rolling goes away, you will get this green symbol, which means your server is ready. Alright, so this is the console. You don't, as you can see, I cannot connect to this instance in any way. Right, it shows me that it has PHP installed on it, and it has this OS, which is Amazon Linux, and is running PHP 7.1, which is fine. But as you can see, there is no button over here which will let me connect to the system. All I have is this button which says upload and deploy. If I click on it, I'll be prompted with this screen where I can choose a file to upload. So this is basically where I will upload my website, and once I choose my website, I'll hit deploy, and that my website will automatically get deployed on Elastic Beanstalk. So once it gets deployed, once I get this green symbol, I will straight away go to this link, and this will take me to my website. So as you can see, this is the default page as of now, and it says congratulations, your AWS Elastic Beanstalk PHP application is now running. Right, so you are not installing any software, you're not installing Apache, you're not installing PHP, everything is happening automatically. So this is what platform as a service is, right? And if you were to have the similar kind of service in Azure, this service is known as app service in Azure. So if you were to search app service, you can get it over here. right? So app services. So app services is similar to your Elastic Beanstalk. So in app services, there's a service called web app, which is used to deploy your website on AWS. But the difference between these two services from these two cloud providers is that over here in AWS, you can quickly click on upload and deploy and just upload your application. But in Azure, it is the other way around. You actually have to do it through Git, right? So you should know Git. You should have your code uploaded on Git, and from over there it pulls your website and deploys it on itself. I mean, the logic is same. You still are not getting the access to your operating system, but the method of uploading your website is different. Alright, so this is the difference between the two platform as a service from these two cloud giants. Alright, and with this, guys, I think we are done. We are done with the demo section. Before ending the session, let me tell you some of the things that you should know. If you are more keen to learn about the cloud, what you can do is you can choose a cloud provider that you want to learn first. I would suggest learn AWS first. So you can go to our YouTube channel and go through all the videos which are here. Right, so these are the videos that we has been uploaded by us. So you can go through all these videos. These videos will give you an idea about what AWS service is, right? And then you can pursue your journey on learning AWS. Similarly, we have a playlist on Microsoft Azure as well. You can go here and learn about Microsoft Azure. And if you guys are into reading, we also have a blogging section. So this is our AWS tutorial series. You can go through all the blogs and learn about all the services. And then we have the Azure blog series as well. You can go through the Azure blogs and learn about Microsoft Azure, right? So we as a company, Edureka, we also offer courses on cloud. So if you're keen to learn about learn cloud from us, you can go to our website. There is actually a program called Cloud Masters Program. So it's a combination of different cloud programs that we have. So first of all, you'll get to learn about fundamentals of cloud computing, then AWS, how to migrate your application on AWS, and then also DevOps. Right? We also have included our Azure course in these profiles, and these are given to you at a discounted rate. If you want to pursue single courses, that is just AWS or just Azure, you can also do that. You can go to our website and you'll find all the information related to it over there. Also, guys, we have our batches. We take batches on weekdays and on weekends, right? So if you want to, so we at Edureka, we understand that you as professionals, you don't have time, right? So we have flexible batch timings. You can choose a batch according to your time and go ahead. Right. Also, before ending the session, I would like to ask you guys to fill in a survey form about this live session that we just took. Right. Put in your details and submit it, and you can actually claim on an offer on the courses if you will buy from our website. Right. So we'll be delighted if you can fill the survey form. And with that, I think we'll wrap up the session. So thank you guys for attending today's session. I hope you learned something new today. So everything that we practiced today, I would recommend you guys to practice it once on your own as well, so that it becomes a better learning experience. All right. Till then, guys, see you next time. Have a good day ahead. Goodbye.